Hello YouTube, Goddard Radio Moscow here again with another beer review for you, as is usual. Now for this one we're going to come back to Heidelberg. For those of you who don't know, Heidelberg is sort of halfway between the two major Western German cities of Frankfurt and Stuttgart, of course. So we're going to have a little look at one of the four breweries here that we have in Heidelberg. We've got two little brew pubs, the Vetter and the Heidelberger Brauerei, on the outskirts of another district you would probably call Ziegelhausen, or even another village. There's a little bit of a debate about exactly whether this is part of Heidelberg or not. You also have the Brauerei Zoom close to Heidelberg, but the main one in Heidelberg that is very, very well known is the Heidelberger Brauerei, and these guys export all across Germany. So we're going to have a little look at the Heidelberger Brauerei Premium Export Beer today, and I've actually reviewed a couple of these beers for you before, so the link to my other videos is in the video description there, so check that out if you are interested. And as is usual with my beer reviews, I'll take you through a brief history of the brewery, tell you a little bit about where exactly the beer comes from, and as I always say, if you are simply just interested in the tasting of this beer, then feel free to go on towards the latter part of the video and you will catch that particular segment. And I'll try again for the box up here. So anyway, to tell you about the history of this brewery, many of you will have actually heard of the Reinheitsgebot of 1516, which is the strict code by which most German beer is brewed. But in Heidelberg there's an even stricter code that was issued in the year 1603, and there's actually an even more strict guideline here on the actual brewing process and on the raw materials that are used in the beer as well. But 150 years after the introduction of this law, the Heidelberger Brauerei was born in the year 1753, and by 1816 there were apparently a total of 38 breweries operating in Heidelberg. Now the original property of the Heidelberger Brewery changed many times and it was continually growing, but it was taken over by the Kleinlein brothers in the year 1820, and at that time the property was called the Kleinlein, obviously after them, but it consisted of a residential house, a 3-story brewery, a steam engine, a refrigerated ship for the river, a stables, a malts house, and a rock cellar where they would also store the beer. And at this time they actually only brewed from September until May, and the extra production was embedded in the rock cellars of the castle, and they used ice from the Neckar River, which runs through Heidelberg of course, and also ice from the castle pond, and they stored this excess production until summer when they would sell it again. But back in these early days, all the hops and ingredients were locally cultivated, and the brewers actually had to rely on experience and observations to get the brews to come out correctly. But in 1870, the Kleinlein brothers actually bought another property in Bergstrasse, which is number 91 today, not far from where I live actually. But there they built a brand new brewery and made this their main base. And the secret of their success was apparently the brewing beer in a light Viennese style, although unfortunately the sheer level of investment that they had to make for this brewery, the brothers really struggled with this, and they actually sold the brewery to engineer Louis Scholl, and the brewery was then renamed the Heidelberg Aktienbrauerei Kleinlein Heidelberg, and one of the brothers, Karl Kleinlein, actually remained as the brewmaster and as a board member in the brewery until the year 1897. But by 1900, only 6 of the previously 38 Heidelberg breweries actually remained. This was the Kleinlein Brewery, Schrödel, the Angels, Golden Keg, Crown, and also Ziegler's. And over the following 20 years, many of the rest of these breweries were actually bought over or shut down. And so by 1920, only the Heidelberg Aktienbrauerei and the Angels Brewery were left. But the progress of the Heidelberger Aktienbrauerei actually continued over this period. It was non-stop. In 1897 they appointed their first ice cream maker, apparently a big step in their history according to their website, and in 1912 they actually purchased their first motor cars for beer deliveries, and they also set up their new steam engines in the brewery that year as well. But by this time the Aktienbrauerei was actually one of the largest breweries in Baden, and it was the leading local brewery in Heidelberg of course. Now in 1914 the Heidelberger Brauerei used the castle image for the first time as their trademark, which you can see on the bottle there, and this has stayed with the brewery despite numerous changes in ownership. But the brewery changed hands once in 1934 and then again in 1968 when it was brought by the Schultheiss brewery from Berlin, but this signalled the end of independence for the brewery. But they continued to operate in Heidelberg at the same time, despite that loss of independence, if you like. But in 1985 the brewery was renamed Heidelberg Castle Brauerei AG. AG of course is just a sort of suffix that you get in Germany for business, but then it was finally acquired by Werner Kindemann, and then it joined his restaurant chain later on. In 2005, the brewery was taken over by Michael Mack and then became the Heidelberger Brauerei. And apparently it is one of the few existing private breweries, and it's the oldest surviving brewery in Heidelberg as well. But apparently Michael Mack has steered the brewery in the direction of environmental sustainability and sustainable business growth. And today they actually brew it in the Pfaffengraun district of Heidelberg in a very, very modern facility, and they use all raw materials from the local region. So that is your brief history of the Heidelberger Brewery there. I hope I didn't go through it too fast for you, but just to list the other beers you can get from the Heidelberger Brauerei here, you can get the 1603 Pils, which is brewed in accordance with the Heidelberg law that I mentioned to you a minute ago. Of course, further regulations on the raw materials and on the brewing process itself. There's an alcohol-free variant of that, of course. There's the Premium Export, the Crystalweizen, the Dunkelweizen, and the Hefeweizen Hell, the Original, the Pils, the Dunkel, the Naturtrüb Keller beer, the Lenzenbock, and also the Winter beer as well. That's all the beers you can get from the Heidelberger Brauerei. So let's get on with the tasting of this beer here. This guy is a 5.4% Pils beer, but I've seen some people describe it as a Helles one. I've looked it up before. I'll just bring up the camera and let you have a little look at the label art on this guy. This is the same kind of label art that's on all the Heidelberger beers. They're all usually just different colours, in fact. And I should actually say the Original and the Bock Drauf beer have a different label scheme to the 500ml bottles or the half litres. Those guys are only 0.33 litre bottles. But all of the Heidelberg beers have this red stripe that goes across them, one of the symbols of the town, I think. And you can also see on the bottle here, if I bring it further up, you can see the Heidelberger Aktien Brauerei crest there. And these guys also won a golden medal as well, as you can see here, the gold standard of Germany. And quite a few breweries have that actually, so it's quite an interesting thing. The best by date, the use by date, on this beer is the 5th of September 2014. So we're well in date. And the bottle cap on this guy as well, you can see it's the Heidelberg Export one. All the beers actually have a unique bottle cap, if you like, but like I say, they just change the colours of the labels but use a similar scheme, and that's the case with the bottle caps as well. So that's how you always know it's a Heidelberger beer, with this red stripe and one of the different coloured labels. But let's get this guy open and we'll get on with the tasting here. As I mentioned, a 5.4% Pils kind of Helles style beer. As you can see, nice smoky opening there. Actually quite a bit of smoke coming off that. Quite a more of a malty aroma that's coming off this if I smell it straight up. Just put a little bit of this guy in the glass just now and then we'll swirl it up. See how we get on. So it's quite a sweet malty aroma that's coming off of it first. Quite a sweet bread one, but I think there's quite a lot of cereal in the aroma here actually. It's definitely a cereal bready aroma that's coming out of this guy first. And it's maybe even just a slightly little bit toasted as well. But I really think there is a big bready aroma there, but I think there's quite a bit of cereal in it as well. But it's got an odd little bit of sweetness to it, but I don't think it's quite yeast. It's definitely more of a cereal prominence that the aroma has here. But there's definitely some sort of grassy hops in there, just with this typical grassy citrus hops there on the back of the beer as well. But you have to sort of breathe it in quite quickly or quite deeply to pick up that particular aroma. But yeah, definitely quite a cereally, bready aroma to this one. It's not too prominent, in fact, the aroma on this guy. It really is quite mild. So a little bit of sediment coming out with this guy here. Just watch it doesn't go crazy. Should be okay. I'll put the last little bit in a minute, but we'll just have a little look at the colour of this guy. As you can see, more than a 3-finger frothy white head there. It's a little bit bumpy on the side, but as you can see, if I put my fingers behind this guy, it's quite a rich kind of see-through clear golden colour. It's definitely a sort of, I describe that as a pretty rich golden colour rather than a pale straw. But it's quite an attractive looking beer. Not too much carbonation visible through the glass for this guy, I have to say. Some bigger bubbles just kind of coming up on one side there, but overall it's a sort of typical looking macro Pils, if you like. A little bit of sediment there as I just bring the last of the beer out there, but let's give it a taste and see how we get on. Quite quite a chalky mouthfeel to this one, in fact, actually. But yeah, it's got a slightly sweet bready malt on the opening, but I think there is quite a little bit of cereal in there, in fact. Yeah, I'm definitely picking up a little bit of a kind of cereal or grainy bite at the end of the bready malt there, and then it is quite fresh again. It goes into the grassy hops quite quickly, but the malts on this guy, in terms of it being a sort of premium export beer, if you like, that's the unusual thing, is that this has a bit more of a longer malty taste than other ones I've tried. But yeah, I think that's fair actually. It definitely has more of a sort of it definitely is a longer malty taste in this one than some of the premium beers that I've tried for you before. Yeah, definitely a kind of long white bready malty base on this guy. A lot of kind of cereal flavours in there on the background, just a nice little bit of spice. The grassy hops come out on the finish there, and it's actually quite a dry grassy hop in my opinion. And there's not even a little bit of citrus to it. It is a fully kind of grassy hop. I don't think there really is any citrus in there. The main flavour in this one, the cereal and the kind of grassy hop bitterness, the cereal spice and the grassy hop bitterness actually blend quite well together in it. But it does have that, with it being a macro pils, it kind of goes into that typical kind of cardboardy flavour. In my opinion, I really don't think this export beer is as good as the pils that you can get. I would pick the pils any day over this beer, to be honest with you. The pils is definitely a better beer. I don't think there's much of a question about that. But yeah, the mouthfeel of this guy is slightly chalky. And to me, it feels like the sort of chalky mouthfeel is more the contribution of that mix that you're getting between the kind of dry, grassy hop and also the kind of cereal spice. It is definitely kind of somewhere in the middle of that, I guess. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel, it is definitely that you're getting that chalky flavour out of it. It's light bodied at the same time, it's quite carbonated, and that also contributes to the sort of chalky-ish mouthfeel, but it's a slightly oily feel too. But it is quite wet, and it seems to, this guy is just out of the fridge, but the kind of wetness of it gives it quite a cooling element, so maybe more of a sort of summer beer. But overall, my thoughts on this beer, it's definitely nowhere near as good as the pils in my opinion. And the 1603 was another one that wasn't the regular pils from the Heidelberg Brewery. If you want to try one of their sort of more drinkable beers, I would always say go for the pils beer. I really don't think this guy is anywhere near up to the standard of the pils. The 1603 in honesty wasn't as good as the pils either, and I really like the Bock beer that these guys do. So those would be my two, the Heidelberger Pils and the Heidelberger Bock Drauf as they call it. Those are really good, and that would be my two picks of the beers. And their Dunkel Hefeweizen is also good. I've had that before, but I've not reviewed it for you yet. But this guy, in honesty, I think it's a little bit disappointing in comparison to the pils. I would pick the pils over this any day. But like I say, the flavour of this guy is a nice... It does, to be fair to it, it does have quite a nice malt base, and the dry grassy hop mixes quite well with it. The flavour of it overall is well balanced, but I really do just think the pils beer that you get from the Heidelberger Brauerei is better. So give this guy a try if you come to Heidelberg, see what you think of it yourself. If you do happen to have tried this beer, please let me know in the comment section your own thoughts on this one. I would, like I say though, I would recommend if you're trying a Heidelberger beer for the first time, go for the pils, the Dunkel Hefeweizen, or of course for the Bock Drauf. I really like the Bock Drauf beer. That's probably my favourite out of all of those three. But you know, give it a try and see what you think. As I've always said, beer is subjective. I think this guy isn't as good as the brewery can do in other efforts, but you know, beer is subjective. You might really like this one and hate the pills. You know, it's all good. People have different opinions, as many beer YouTubers will tell you. But anyway, I hope you found my beer review informative. Like I say, let me know in the comments section your own thoughts on this beer, and please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. I hope you've enjoyed this beer review, and there will be many more to come. Cheers.